Well, a related question to the issue of God in relationship to evil is the difficulty Christians in particular have with understanding how God could ever be the cause of evil. And yet, if you look at the Hebrew scriptures, which are the foundation for Christian scriptures, when Yahweh is pictured as the tribal God, he inflicts a lot of evil. You wouldn't want to have a run-in with Yahweh if you were a Canaanite. You would not want to have a run-in with Yahweh after you read some of the Psalms. So, I don't think I've thought about this a great deal, but as Israel developed its own religion and became more of a had a universal sense, particularly in Isaiah and afterwards, and that God was a compassionate God who was all loving, the idea that God could inflict evil would seem to be contrary to the understanding of a universal, all compassionate God who has established a covenant with us and him, and him to speak of it in an anthropomorphic sense, that it's an unequal covenant, and it's based upon a loving relationship with God, the Hesed Yahweh. To talk about God then inflicting evil at the same time is very difficult for the Western Christian to speak of, to think of, and yet there seems to be so much evil inflicted by Christians at the same time. There's a real conflict that we say, well, God could not inflict evil, and yet Gandhi, when he came to the West, was shocked that the Gospels he read before he came here were never put into practice, that there seemed to be such discontinuity between this God who's pictured as all loving, caring, particularly for the poor and the oppressed, that none of that made any sense or had any meaning in the West that he saw when he came here. That this was a religion that committed a great deal of evil, and yet it said God could not commit any evil. So there is some discontinuity. I guess the tendency too of Western Christianity to be more rational, logical, to try to explain God to the last detail. They had to come up with an understanding of God that he could not do any evil, because they were using Greek categories for understanding of God based on Aristotle and Plato to a certain extent. So to talk about God doing evil would be incomprehensible to a scholastic understanding of God's nature based upon Aristotle. I don't know much about the Eastern Church, but I would wonder, since the Eastern Church is not as rationalistic in its theology, that there might be more of an understanding of God's relationship to human beings in this question of evil. That's pure speculation on my part. I don't know enough about Eastern theology. But in the West, I guess, particularly after the definitions of the Trinity, which was the first major attempt on the part of the Western Church to take a Semitic understanding and incorporate it with a Greek understanding, that we were setting ourselves on a theological road that was very different from the rest of Christianity.